millennium reign. 1,000 years. So we, with Yahshua, are ruling and reigning on earth in our resurrected bodies, and those who did not take the mark of the beast, but were not partakers of the first resurrection, the few mortals that survived all that, they're mortals going to 1,000 years, and they're having babies and children and populating the earth. So we have this 1,000 years, and this 1,000 years is described in Zechariah 14. It says, during this period, all nations of the earth will come up to keep the feast of Sukkot at Jerusalem, where Yahshua is ruling and reigning. Any nation that does not will receive a plague of drought. So there will still be sin going on during this 1,000 years. It'll be limited because what happens at the beginning of this 1,000 years is Satan, according to Revelation chapter 20, Satan is bound down in the abyss. Satan is bound down here. And he no longer has any influence. His fallen angels no longer have any influence on the earth. And Yahshua is ruling and reigning from Jerusalem. We're ruling and reigning with him as kings and priests with him. And there's no war going on. Yahshua is ruling with a rod of iron. Any sin that does happen is dealt with swiftly and quickly. The Torah goes forth from Zion. And basically, this is a time in which Jerusalem is established as a praise in the earth on Mount Zion, and living waters come out of Jerusalem and begin to heal the earth. Now, there are, if you go into Ezekiel, the last 4 chapters of Ezekiel, you read about how there's still these salt and marshy places where there is no healing that goes on, because there's still pockets of the earth that are in rebellion. In the Psalms, you get this picture of people sort of being in the outside, in the far distant places of the earth, afraid of what's going on. They don't want anything to do with it, and they live in the lands that are parched and dry. So this is during the 1,000-year reign. If someone dies at 100 years old, they're considered a child. Okay, so for 1,000 years, Yahshua is ruling and reigning over the peoples of the earth, and with no war and no disease or famine going on, you can imagine the population of the earth gets to be, huge. I mean, we're talking trillions, 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 and trillions of people over this 1,000-year period. Another purpose for this 1,000 years is Israel finally becomes what it was supposed to be. Okay, sort of the way you see it under Solomon, only this time Solomon doesn't go into apostasy, because it's not Solomon who's ruling and reigning, it's Yahshua. And also during this 1,000 years, we have a temple that's built and animal sacrifices that are done. It's done from the temple, and these animal sacrifices, they simply point back toward what the Messiah did thousands of years ago at the cross. That's the only, when Yahshua was nailed to the tree 2,000 years ago, that blood sacrifice is the only atonement that can cover our sin. And that was true both for the animal sacrifices in the past, in ancient Israel. They were pointing toward Yahshua, and these animal sacrifices that are done, which are described in Zechariah 4, they're also described in Ezekiel, the last 4 chapters of Ezekiel, and it's also described in Malachi 3, where it says that Yahshua is going to purge the Levitical priesthood, purge the Levites, and restore the Levitical order. The Melchizedek order, which has always been, is still going to be in full effect, but the Levitical priesthood will be back as well. And again, these animal sacrifices will simply point back toward what Messiah did. But basically, Israel is going to be the way it was supposed to be, the way that Yah intended it to be. And that's why in Acts chapter 1, Peter asked Yahshua, he said, "Are you at this time going to restore the kingdom to Israel?" And Yahshua said, "Peter, it's not for you to know those times and seasons. That's still in the future, basically." So this is the 7th millennium, the millennium of rest. Okay, man has ruled and reigned for 6,000 years in sin, and now we're on the cusp of getting to that 1,000 years, or the millennium. Now, if you continue to read in Revelation 20, it says sometime after the 1,000 years has expired, some point afterwards, Satan is re-released from the pit. Satan comes out, and it describes in Revelation 20 as a little season. A little season. And Satan is re-released, and the trillions and trillions of people who now populate the earth that have been born and raised in the millennium, if they are just faking it, if they're just doing the motions because Yahshua is there ruling with a rod of iron, they're now going to get tested by Satan. They're going to get tested just like Adam and Eve were tested, back in the garden. And it says that Satan's able to deceive so many of these people, that it's the army he's able to gather from the four quarters of the earth, from Gog and Magog, is like a sand covering the sea. And Satan, for this little season, he's going to gather all these people, and he's going to try to, attack the camp of the saints, Jerusalem, basically. And, of course, the fire of Yah is going to come down from heaven, and basically Satan is going to be destroyed. He's going to be thrown into the lake of fire, where he's going to burn forever and ever. Where the false prophet and the beast are, which were thrown into the lake of fire way back here. And it talks about in Isaiah, the last chapter of Isaiah 66, it talks about both during the millennial kingdom and even the new heavens and earth that we're going to be able to behold the wicked who are burning in the lake of fire. And they burn forever and ever and ever, where the worm does not die, where there's weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth. So that rebellion is very short-lived, and it's destroyed. And then at that point, the heavens and earth, it says, flees away, because now we come to what's known as the Great White Throne Judgment. We'll do this in blue for heaven. The Great White Throne Judgment. Now this is what's known as the second death. And basically all the wicked at this point are now resurrected. So there's a second death. And anyone whose names are not written in the Lamb's Book of Life are judged at this second death. That's why, again, blessed is he who's part of the first resurrection, okay, because they're not going to have any part in the second death. Now, there are going to be some people who, lived and died during the millennium, or were still alive at the end of the millennium, who did put their faith in Messiah, okay, and they'll also, because they were mortal, they'll also be resurrected at the second death, and if their names are found in the Book of Life, they'll get to go with him. But those are only people that happen in the millennium. Everyone that's living right now, okay, either you're going to be part of the first resurrection or you're going to be part of the second death. Unless you're one of those few that survive, but I wouldn't trust in that at all. Because it says in Isaiah that a man's going to be as rare as a wedge of gold at that point by the end of the Great Tribulation. So at the second death, you have the Great White Throne Judgment. White Throne Judgment. And so just as we had Yom Teruah, the Feast of Trumpets, filled here, and remember every year when you celebrate Yom Teruah, the Feast of Trumpets that the Jews wrongly call Rosh Hashanah, there's the 10 days between Feast of Trumpets and Yom Kippur. Well, now you have Yom Kippur fulfilled at this Great White Throne Judgment. Okay? And instead of 10 days between Yom Teruah and Yom Kippur, you have 1,000 years, or 10 groups of 100 years. So you can see the templates fulfilled. So the second death, so then all the wicked that are resurrected, that are not found in the Lamb's Book of Life, everyone who's ever lived, whether in the millennium or before that were wicked, they're resurrected. Because again, as Daniel 12 says, some are resurrected to eternal life, right back here, and others are resurrected to everlasting shame and contempt. And that's what happens here. And they're all thrown into the lake of fire where the beast, false prophet, and Satan are. And they burn forever and ever. So now Yom Kippur has been fulfilled. Then we come to, beyond this, we come to now the new heavens. Let's see, what should I use for this? Let's see, I'll use purple again for royalty. So beyond the Great White Throne, you now have the new heavens and new earth. Sorry, my timeline has run out here. And this is described in Revelation 21 and 22. This is now where the Feast of Sukkot, Feast of Tabernacles, that all the nations have to come up to every year during this 1,000 years. This is where the Feast of Sukkot is now fulfilled, because it literally says in Revelation 21 that now the new Jerusalem comes down from heaven. The whole earth and heavens are remade, they're renewed. And Yah now Sukkots or